Looks like we're just in time for the party.
This is Star Wars Starfighter. It's weird coming back to Star Wars Starfighter after all these years. Like Rogue Squadron, I loved it as a kid. Unlike Rogue Squadron, I still really enjoy it as an adult. Most of the time, I've found nostalgia to be misleading, downright blinding. Here, Starfighter mostly stays on target, but it could use a little course correction.
They're on me! I can't shake them!
You see, Starfighter was released in the unenviable time of being long enough after the Phantom Menace that fans were disinterested in Episode 1 related material, and also right before Attack of the Clones released, so it couldn't be tied into Attack of the Clones. It remains one of the final Episode 1 centric games, as well as one of the best ones. Certainly miles better than Star Wars Obi-Wan. Starfighter is basically Rogue Squadron for everyone who liked a Nintendo GameCube, and it improves upon everything Factor 5 failed to really make work in their games. The controls work well whether you're using a keyboard or mouse, joystick, or a controller, although a controller will need a few quick key rebinds. The combat is actually balanced, for the most part anyway. Even the voice acting and writing is better with some genuinely solid performances. Speaking of which, I know that I don't talk about voice actors this early on, but Rob Paulsen and Jess Harnell are in this game! No, I am not kidding. Yakko and Wacko from the Animaniacs are in this game. So are Jim Ward and Gray DeLise. Yeah, Captain Quark and Princess Azula are also among the cast members, and they're all just extras. Which is weird, because the lead with the most screen time, Darren Scott as Reese Dallos, is kind of a nobody. It doesn't help that Reese is a lost member of Bravo Flight, the Naboo security force, caught up in the conflict, and manages to be the least interesting character in the game.
Bravo 7, I need your help! I can't shake this one!
I'll get it, Bravo 10.
Let me put a stop to your futile efforts. Huh? Sorry, no! Now it's your turn.
Lisa Fuson fares better as freelancer Vanna Sage, a pilot we barely spend any time with despite a lot of interesting ideas surrounding her that never get fleshed out.
Ready! Thought you were dead.
How did you get so pessimistic?
Look, I'm a little busy. What do you want?
I got an emergency here. We need to use your base. Repairs to make.
We?
Injured member of Bravo Flight.
Oh, great. Another idealist.
Well, not at the moment. Can we pay you a visit?
Door's always open for you, Reddy.
Fuson previously did a lot of work as Princess Leia in several games, and she seems to have a much easier time with things getting to inhabit an original character rather than having to constantly try to sound like Carrie Fisher. Topping out our heroic trio, Charles Rocket, may he rest in peace, gives the best performance of the bunch in the role of the space pirate Nim. He managed to endear the pirate to enough fans that he got his own comic book miniseries, a more prominent role in this game's sequel, and a secret base in Star Wars Galaxies. Which, for a one-off character written for a licensed tie-in for a movie that a lot of people hate, is pretty damn impressive. And a lot of that hangs on his performance. The writing itself is okay for Nim, but it's not mind-blowing. But he gives such an energy to it that you're invested. You're like, hell yeah, I'm with this guy.
We got a lock on the convoy, Nim. Straight ahead.
Let's get over to those freighters! We don't have much time!
Looks like they've called for backup. Scarabs. I knew it wouldn't be easy.
Let's go!
We found it, Nim, but the Trade Federation is closing in fast.
Music to my ears. Give us a nav point.
Sending.
Hold your position. We're almost there. Freeze.
Nim, we meet at last. Put the blaster down.
Not before I take a good look at the only person to ever put me behind bars. Now I'll kill you.
Which is actually the reason I bring this up. Besides the mind-boggling number of talented actors filling up the background, the voice acting in general is part of what sells Starfighter. Save for Darren Scott sounding a little bit too excited to be here, everyone is remarkably grounded and enjoyable in their deliveries. A few lines fall flat here and there, and this isn't Knights of the Old Republic 2 quality writing, but the dialogue itself is enjoyable and there's some real camaraderie between the cast. Without these voices, I doubt the story would be half as enjoyable though. Another thing you may notice is that despite being based on the Phantom Menace, the game actively goes out of its way to never feature any of the main plot beats besides the final battle with the droid control ship. Even the ground battle we see our heroes participate in focuses on a Naboo resistance base rather than the Gungan battle. Because of this, Starfighter feels more like supplementary material, and if you haven't seen the film, then there may be a few questions left hanging in the air. Still, what's here is better than the Phantom Menace. The game goes out of its way to ensure each protagonist has been wronged by the Trade Federation, giving you plenty of motivation to want revenge. After surviving the Federation's schemes, our heroes form a team that helps the Naboo resistance and cripples the Trade Federation's war effort. You know, things you would actually expect during a planetary invasion, instead of a small child destroying an entire space station that shuts off all the ground forces across an entire planet. Also, yeah, they even ignore that bit. No baby Anakin tugging over the comlink. Even if Lucas himself didn't quite get people were talking about when they complained about that, clearly the developers at LucasArts did. To top things off, each of the game's heroes uses a unique ship with different special abilities and stats. Reese's N1 fighter has rapid shield regeneration and uses lock-on torpedoes. Vanna's Tri-Wing fighter has heavy armor and target-seeking laser cannons. Nim's bomber has bombs and a secondary autogun that covers his flank. Out of the three, Vanna is far and away the most powerful. Her guns can tear through just about anything due to their lock-on functionality, and while you have to paint targets before they lock on, that isn't very hard to do. In fact, you can paint multiple targets at once. Sadly, she only gets 3 missions, while Reese and Nim get around 5 or so each. Thankfully, completing all of her missions with a gold rank ensures unlocking her for use in any other mission. So, at least there's that. You see, one of the ways Starfighter improves on the Rogue Squadron formula is by adding in bonus objectives with actual substantial rewards. Bronze and Silver help unlock bonus missions, while Gold tier goes towards unlocking fighters. You only get gold by completing all 3 bonus objectives in a specific mission, so the challenge is not in completing the fairly reasonable main objectives, but instead the more difficult bonus objectives. Some are simple, like beating a mission in a certain time limit, while others are more difficult, like ensuring a VIP gets to your base alive or not. On top of this, sometimes achieving the bonus objective is its own reward by making another part of the mission easier. Certain scenarios will actually adapt based on how poorly or well the mission goes. Maybe you get a new wingman who can bomb the opposition, or you cut off enemy reinforcements so they can't harry you later. It's a great addition and it adds to the game's replayability. Several of the missions can play out multiple ways, and getting a gold tier outcome is always immensely satisfying. Combine this with a set of missions that are challenging without being masochistic, save for 2 defense missions and that final boss fight. Some really tight controls, plus a nice variety of playstyles, and you've got a really solid arcade flight sim. Enemies are also varied, with a mixture of ground and air combatants that put up a fair fight. Sometimes they can be a little too precise with their shots, but more often than not they're forgiving. You've also got a good mixture of ground and space missions, and each scenario has unique objectives that feel distinctive. I do think those 3 missions I mentioned before are a bit on the masochistic side, but if that becomes a problem you can turn down the difficulty and then move on. There's also cheat codes if you don't want to unlock all the bonus objectives, plus there's a hidden bonus fire that requires a code. There's even minor things that are nice, like being able to give basic commands to your wingman.
Attack my target.
Engaging target. You're the boss!
It's not Republic Commando, but they do make a difference. You can also manually target enemies to keep track of them and check their health status, which is fantastic and very handy when in more hectic duels. The graphics are even pretty decent for a PS2 era game, with some solid sound design. The cutscenes themselves don't look amazing, but they're certainly better animated than some of the stuff that was considered acceptable around the time of Starfighter's release.
Go away, Nim. You're not welcome.
Vanna, how do you get out?
Charm.
You were right about the Trade Federation. They've taken my base.
That's why you came back?
Yeah.
What do you have in mind?
Who's the space jockey?
Reese Dallows, Bravo Flight.
So clean cut. What's your story?
We're planning on blowing up the Trade Federation droid factory.
You and whose army?
Yours.
The one hiccup from the sound design, though, is that there is way too much emphasis on the sound effects over everything else. The constant sound of your laser fire gets old fast, and you're going to want to turn down the volume. The game itself doesn't have any unique compositions of its own, but at the very least makes great use of John Williams' score for the Phantom Menace, and it uses them appropriately rather than just slapping the sounds in there. The one downside is while there are a handful of bonus missions to unlock, they're kind of an afterthought. An actual multiplayer mode could be fun, and the Xbox version did receive at least a local multiplayer. On PC, we get a few arcade missions and a protracted escort sequence. At least there's the opportunity to unlock Darth Maul's Sith Infiltrator ship. That's always fun to play with. Still, these are relatively minor qualms by comparison to Starfighter's biggest issue. The problem with Starfighter is that the PC port runs like arse. Well, let me clarify. When it actually runs, it's fine. When it's not running properly, you're stuck in a hellish cycle of trying to get the damn thing to boot. It's like when you're trying to start a car that hasn't been driven in 5 years that was left out in the rain. Thankfully, there is a way around this. While the Steam version is basically just the game's files copied off a disc, which sadly is the version I have, there is a good old games version available, and that's probably your best bet for playing this on a modern system. Please bear this in mind if you don't have an old Windows XP machine lying around to boot your older games. Still, all things considered, I really enjoyed my time with Star Wars Starfighter. It's sharply designed, got some solid talent both on screen and behind the scenes, and is a cut above the usual arcade flight sim, which is why it gets an 8 out of 10.